I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I am speaking with several Emmy-nominated documentary filmmakers and producers as part of our Meet the Experts TV Documentaries panel. We have Leah Wolchok, the co-director of Judy Blume Forever, Ryan White, the director of Pamela, A Love Story, Lucinda Axelsson, the executive producer of Secrets of the Elephants, Nikole-Hannah Jones, the creator and executive producer of the 1619 Project, and Padma Lakshmi, the executive producer and host of Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi. I'm sorry. First question I wanted to ask, and I love asking this, especially when interviewing people who make nonfiction, is what was the thing that you saw, like a documentary or a documentary program that you saw that either made you want to be a part of documentary filmmaking, or just stood out to you and made you realize, wow, this is something that is incredibly powerful? And I want to start with you, Leah.
Well, I have to say, I was an English major studying poetry, where we would spend like months on a single stanza of a poem, when I got into a documentary film class in college. And it was the only film class I could take as a non-major. And I was kind of bummed that I got into a documentary class versus a fiction class. It was Monday nights from 7 to 10. Sorry, this is a really long story, but anyways, it was like all the athletes in the class, because it was after sports practice, and me and a couple other documentary buffs. I wasn't a documentary buff at the time, but it was an incredible class that changed my life, because I think it was probably Pennebaker's films, Primary and Crisis. I mean, we watched we started with Nanook of the North, which is now controversial at the time in the 90s. I don't think people realized or weren't talking about how controversial that film was as a documentary, but Primary and Crisis, those two films, getting inside, a primary campaign and inside Washington in a way that just felt so intimate, so personal, and so revolutionary, I think, and so real, especially in the ivory tower, where we were, as I said, just like pontificating about what the meaning of a single word in a poem. I think those two films really opened my eyes and made me want to make documentaries.
And what about you? And what about you, Lucinda?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in England, and I remember when I first started out seeing this amazing documentary by a documentary maker called Philippa Lowthorpe, and it was called 3 Salons at the Seaside, and it was about these incredible women who ran these hair salons at the seaside. And it's sort of, it's a quite inauspicious topic for a documentary, but actually what she did was she got into a whole subculture of northern female life, these really strong women all looking out for each other, all through the salon. They were supporting each other, they were talking about life and their partners and their kids and their grandkids, and it was sort of all human life was there in these very uninspiring little salons, and it was all about female empowerment, what it was to be a woman. I mean, this was in the sort of 70s, 80s, and it was all about attitudes to women, sexuality, empowerment, all these things, but through this really unprepossessing lens. And I think what it made me realize was how just ordinary people's lives, if you tell their stories well, just have this most incredible resonance. You don't have to be famous, you don't have to be glamorous, you don't have to be famous in any way, shape or form, or even have achieved that much in your life, but actually to resonate with an audience and to really touch you and really move you. It was an absolute masterclass in taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary and entirely relatable. How I got into wildlife filmmaking from that is a whole other story, but it was just that incredible, way into people's lives and storytelling that really inspired me.
And how about you, Nikole?
I guess I would say two. The earliest documentary I remember really having impact on me was Eyes on the Prize. I was maybe 11 years old. I was very nerdy. I was always very interested in history. I feel like I had watched, a dozen Holocaust documentaries, but I had never seen a documentary about the Black American experience that told that story so thoroughly and really helped me start piecing together what I was seeing in the world that didn't make sense to me without having that history. And we certainly weren't learning that depth of history in school. And much more recently was Ezra Edelman's O.J. Simpson Made in America documentary. And when the documentary came out, I had zero interest in watching it. I didn't need to ever see another thing about O.J. Simpson ever. I thought I understood everything that I needed to know. But so many people I respected kept talking about it. And I watched it, and it was just amazing that documentary is not really about O.J. at all. It's about our inability to grapple with race in America and how we viewed everything in that trial through the prism of the racial identity that this country has put on us. But I also just think structurally, I teach it to my students just to study storytelling structure. In the first episode, of course, the only thing you're waiting for is to hear about the murder. And you don't hear anything about that murder all until the very last scene of the first episode. And by then you're completely hooked without even having seen anything about the reason you're watching the documentary. So I just think it really is a masterclass on having depth to these stories that we think we know and we don't, but also just how effective structure can be in pulling the viewer along. And I think every storyteller, I don't care if you're a writer, if you do radio, if you do television, structure is the bane of your existence. So to see someone do it so masterfully was very inspiring for me as I embarked on this documentary series myself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the final episode to me is the craziest thing because it's everything that's happened since. What about you, Padma?
I remember being very young and watching, there wound up being a channel of it for a while, these biography specials. Do you remember those? And I love reading memoirs and biographies, and I love documentaries as well. And I always have, when everyone else is watching American Idol or whatever, I'm sort of over here watching the history of paint at 2 a.m. and totally content and happy to do that. I love general knowledge. So it just speaks to all of my, interests. And I remember those, when I was very young, and I have since always loved documentaries about people. And I think that is also why, in Taste the Nation, it's really, the stories are basically told through the people in the community, not by anyone outside. And so Taste the Nation is really just about giving my platform to people who don't normally get that big of a microphone. And I think it's because from a very early age, I love, whether it was Cleopatra or Joan, now there's a couple great ones about Toni Morrison and Joan Didion, or Henry VIII, or whatever, especially people throughout history. It gave me a world into who they were that I could never get from a narrative piece. And I remember even that documentary about Madonna, when it came out, it was such a different kind of way to tell a story. And it's really the birth of reality television, if you think about it, looking back. But the part that I liked about it is that you got to know things that were never usually on stage or in the information that person or their life gave you through official channels. And that is always interesting to me. I want to know the backstory. I, want to go deeper beyond just an article. I want to just see the long form version of something. And all those little details are my jam. Like all those little things that seem, okay, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for that. We go through that. I mean, our episodes are only 30 minutes long, and we have to give you so much information as well as the thesis and ask you the questions we want you to ask yourself in 30 minutes. And so it's always a challenge. There's always a lot of information that you struggle with. My worst dilemma is always interviewing somebody and then not using them and having to call and explain to them why they're not in the final product. And, because they tell their friends and they want to be on it. And I know what that feels like. I've certainly been cut out of movies. So, it's hard. And we try never to do that. We try to do as much research and pre-production as we can so that we're respectful with people's time. But, as some of the other contributors have said, like, you never know where the story is going to lead. And as a documentary filmmaker, your job is to tell the story, not tell the story that you want, or at least find as much evidence to tell the story you want.
And what about you, Ryan?
Well, Nikole just totally opened the memory floodgates for me of watching Eye on the Prize in 6th grade now and Miss Augustine Howard's class over the course of 2 weeks. But I grew up in Georgia and I always wanted to be a filmmaker, but there was like no path forward in my mind as a kid from Georgia to become a filmmaker. So likely I studied literature in college, and I was also a photographer. And I took a class where for extra credit, you went to see a documentary that was playing on campus. It was Agnes Varda's film, The Gleaners and I. And I can still remember being in that theater watching that film and my mind totally exploding. Like, I didn't even think I knew what documentary film was. I didn't even think I knew what it was as a medium or definitely as a career path, and just wondering what Agnes was doing in that film and being so entranced by it. And I walked out of the theater and like my career path never diverged after that. I signed up for documentary classes the next day, and I never left that path. And one of my favorite parts about our industry is you're like within arm's length of your heroes. And I got to meet Agnes many times over the course of many years once I became a filmmaker, and talk to her about how her film and many of her films changed my life.
So I want to have fun with this next question. You, as we said, this you are all Emmy nominated for your work. So congratulations to all of you. We know we're not going to be getting a ceremony in September, but I do like to think about, there's a what if scenario. What if your name gets called? And I'm curious for each one of you, what would your ideal music be as you walk up to the stage, if that were to happen? And Lucinda, you have a big smile on your face, so I want to start with you.
I was just trying to think of something, and I was thinking the first thing that came to my mind was the theme music to Born Free. If anyone remembers that for a classic piece of music, it's just so evocative of Africa and the whole sort of concept of animals living their best life in the wild as they should, without fear of humans and the destruction that we wreak upon the natural world. So I guess that would be the music I'd love to hear.
What about you, Nikole?
God, that's such a hard question to answer on the
question.
But I think it would probably be Kendrick Lamar, All Right.
Love that song. How about you, Leah?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Okay, what song would I want? I don't know why this song just popped into my head. It's because my son's favorite song, this artist Kishi Bashi, whose song Violin Tsunami is always on repeat in our house. And I think it would be really sweet to honor my kid by playing that song.
It's so sweet. It really is. What about you, Ryan?
Mine's pretty easy. I guess mine would be the Baywatch theme song. I'm just picturing Pamela running slow motion up to the podium.
That would be amazing.
And what about you, Padma?
While you all were talking, I was racking my brain going, shit, what song? But actually, I have to say, I'm very proud of our theme song on Taste the Nation, the opening song. My girlfriend, DJ Reka, who is a person in the music industry here in New York, who's of South Asian descent, helped me do the music. We have 25 instruments in that music from all over the world, from a banjo to a tabla to an oud. And so I love that music, and sometimes when I hear it, I want people to hear more than what's on the 60 seconds at the beginning. So maybe that would be my song, so I could share it with more people, those who maybe haven't watched Taste the Nation yet.
Well, Padma, Lucinda, Ryan, Leah, and Nikole, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. We wish you all the best over this season. And to all our viewers, make sure to keep going to goldderby.com to update your Emmy predictions in advance of the 75th Emmy Awards. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.